All right, excellent afternoon to all those who are watching me across the state in Nigeria. I'm saying welcome, welcome, welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. Today I'm really excited because there's something, there's a momentum that we are trying to build, but let me be real now, guys. If we don't appreciate our own, who will? If we don't celebrate our heroes, I'm asking again, we will sing their praises and continue to hail them from the pages of history. Today is about a big event. I will save my details for later on as we go on the event. But now I say welcome to another interesting episode of Real Talk with Kike. I remain your convener, Kike Atanda-Owo. And of course, I wish I could talk a little bit about, this false casting or hiking price and fuel and the likes and all that. But let me save my breath till trending segment. So let me see what history has for us today on this day in history segment. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
On this date, July 20th, on this day in 2002, a huge fire broke out at Chevron Texaco's main oil terminal, days after unarmed village women ended a 10-day siege that crippled the oil giant's local operations. The blaze at the multi-million-dollar Escravos terminal in southeastern Nigeria was ignited by a bolt of lightning during an early morning storm, the company said in a statement. The lightning set fire to a storage tank containing about 180,000 barrels of crude oil, the company said. About 80,000 barrels were pumped out of the burning tank. Also on this day in 2002, dozens of villagers were killed, many hacked to death in 3 days of clashes between rival political factions battling for influence in an oil-rich area of the Niger Delta.
All right, many thanks for staying with me. Today's on this day in history for me. I just feel that it's just a stark reminder of the complex challenges faced in the region, and of course where the interplay of environmental concerns, corporate interests, and political conflict, has far-reaching consequences for both local and communities, and of course our country as a whole. And I would want to use this opportunity to just say that, what do we take away from this, especially when it comes to challenges that come our way in the political scene, battling for influence. I don't think that we actually need that, and I think I should use this medium to preach for unity and peace as we forge ahead. I think on this note, this is where I quickly go on a break to get a message from my sponsor. Stay with me, I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with me. The labor of our heroes past shall never be in vain. And speaking about heroes, NIIA, Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, in conjunction with Airpeace, are making history with the celebration of our sports heroes with the event tagged the unveiling of the NIIA Wall of Fame and, of course, the Airpeace Award investiture on the 28th of July 2023. And of course the epoch, or will I say the time event, will be a ground convergence of stakeholders, diplomats, governors, ex-presidents, industry leaders, let me put it like that, to showcase our national heroes in sports and athletes. And of course on the live show today I will be engaging a chief stakeholder on this historical, or will I say history-making events, and of course the international affairs expert, to also discuss the idea, the vision, of course the vision of this event and the groundwork of our great nation and our heroes. So I think before I go further, I think it's important for me to hold my breath now. Let's get to see the profile of my guest, and when I return, the conversation will continue. Stay with me, I'll be right back. All right, many thanks for staying with me. Let me quickly use this opportunity to welcome my guest, Professor Ewosa Osagai. I had to practice that, guys. I keep it real on this platform. And I had to practice them back to back. So it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. So how are you doing today?
Fine, fine.
And let me say this, that is the flag bearer of the coming event on the 28th, and of course on Real Talk with Kike. Many thanks for being on our launch show. But before we go deep into today's show, you may not know this. I felt that I needed to put this out there that personally, I'm one of the alumni of Benedict University. Yes, as as an tenor, you were vice chancellor, of the institution. So I felt I needed to use that to water the floor. So you will be paying me, for this self-introduction after the show. But anyways, it's an honor to have you on the platform today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. All right, quickly, let's just dive straight to the topic at hand, because obviously, I'm excited. I'm happy. This event is being put together for our past heroes, and of course, but beyond our past heroes, I want you to tell people who are just hearing for the first time. Tell us about, what this means to our great nation, Nigeria, and of course, how did you, one of the chief stakeholders, and of course, I want you to also, give us a little bit of what better days. We held a media party, I think about 2 weeks or a week ago, and yes, quite a number of people have seen, have heard, but you never know. Some people are just tuning in now to hear about it. So what motivated the institution to initiate such a prestigious event?
Thank you, Kike, and thank you for that insight. So now I know that you are a queen of IUO.
Of course.
Fantastic.
19 years ago, actually.
19 years ago?
Yeah, almost 2 decades.
That's the only university that you call authentic.
Of course.
IUO authentic.
Authentic.
Very
Absolutely.
good. Now, so here's the story. If you look around the world today, the people who help to navigate very difficult waters, even in conflict situations, in war, and so on, are the unsung heroes, that people never get to know. That's the one face. If you look around Nigeria's ambassadorial representation the world over, traditionally, the orthodox is, you have principal ambassadors, the ones that are appointed by government, and these ones represent the state. But everywhere you go today, you will find ambassadors that are informal, representing Nigeria. So if you found yourself, for instance, in Texas, and the great basketballer who was from, Nigeria, who is a big friend of the Bush family, Hakeem Olajuwon. That's the kind of person who makes things happen. Or you look around the footballing world and you see what, the Mikel Obis of this world have done, and all of those things. You begin to see that there is such a thing as, well, call it informal representation, but it's ambassadorial nonetheless. And then you see, the power of sports the world over. The young people, especially, who have devoted their lives to sports. And in recognition of this, many countries in the world now have ministers of sports. It tells you that even
Youth and sports.
Well, even if there's no youth attached to it. But in many parts of the world, you find ministers of sport, meaning that, at the domestic level, there's a lot going in for sports. So at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, one of the new frontiers, that we have created, it's a new handle for diplomacy. It's the sports diplomacy unit. Because at the Institute, we recognize the power of sports diplomacy. And many stories have been told. In 1967 or 68, during the Nigerian Civil War, the Nigerian side of that war decided to bring the great Pele, to Nigeria. And when Pele played football, the soldiers who were in the battlefront begged their commanders, saying, look, we will cease fire, for the time. Let us see Pele. There were no TVs at the time, but at least they had radio commentaries, Pele playing football. It's the same story in Somalia. It's the same story in Afghanistan. It's the same story in Cambodia, all across the world where sports has been. And we then decided that the person who will run our sports diplomacy is none other than Ambassador Segun Odegbami, who himself is an associate fellow of the Institute. And we've had, two colloquiums, so far. And first to let the world know the essence of sports diplomacy and how far we can go with sports. For us as Nigerians and as Africans and as members of the black race, the turf that we have and the space the world has allocated to us almost naturally is a sporting arena. Whether it's boxing, whether it's athletics, whether it's football, whatever, the color of sports is black. And then, together with, Ambassador Odegbami, we have looked at the content of all of this. So the first colloquium was to say, what's the power of sports? And Odegbami always hinges that on the wise saying by President Nelson Mandela, that sports has the power to change the world, which is true, because that's what sports did for South Africa. Brought the Rainbow Nation together. And today, whether it is rugby or cricket or it's football or even athletics, South Africa has a handle on national cohesion. So that was our first colloquium. And the second colloquium built on that foundation that was laid. We brought people from the US, great, athletes of, the humankind, to look at, the kinds of interfaces that sports would have with culture and the arts. And so that was the first stack of sports. That's the second colloquium, was christened the first stack of sports. And, from the conversations that we had there, it became obvious that this was going to lead us somewhere. And then we started to think of West Africa hosting the world by 2034. Yeah. So it's a big, big project. But in the meantime, and this is the point about what is about to happen, the Big Bang, to demonstrate the power of sports, we thought, that one way to remind Nigerians and to actually anchor the point and give it a very solid foundation, so it becomes part of how we think. So that sports, it's not something that you neglect. It's the mainstream of even diplomacy. We thought, that in 1976, something that many people don't know about happened. It's very significant. In 1976, the government of Nigeria decided that one of the ways to push the fight against apartheid in South Africa was to use sports. You have, the things that would turn a state into a pariah state. You have sanctions. You have those things. And they were not working the way we thought they should work. There were countries that were, caught in the contradiction of openly condemning apartheid, but having sporting relations with South Africa, which was under the apartheid regime at the time, and so on. So Nigeria led a mass boycott, led by the Africans, of the Montreal Games, in Canada. And that was in 1976. Now, this was such great sacrifice on the part of the young men and women, that were world beaters at the time. Today, we talk about the Toby Amushons, we talk about all of these people. In 1976, Nigeria had world beaters in every event almost, and that probably would have been our most successful, outing at the Olympics. But these young men and women, heeded the clarion call, and they joined, and Nigeria flew into Montreal, took the athletes, and came back. And many African countries joined, that whole movement. So that was very significant. So what we are doing is to celebrate the very heroic acts, the very patriotic acts, the very nationalistic acts, the very Pan-Africanist, acts of those young men and women. And then, of course, in 1980, you had another set of young men, who conquered Africa. And so for the first time, Nigeria was winning the African Cup of Nations. So we need to be reminded of these very strong, elements and uses of sports, and what sports can do to the world.
All right, many thanks for that elaborate insights right there. I must say that, this submission of yours has actually covered quite a number of questions that I wanted to ask you. But quickly, the event aims to honor individuals, have a major, or will I say, would have made a significant contribution to diplomacy with all that you've shared thus far. And of course, when it comes to international relations, the bilateral relations as well, because I could pick quite a number of things from your submission. And of course, in sports in Nigeria, so I would like to ask you, can you give us a sneak peek into some of the esteemed personalities, who will be recognized during this event? I have an idea, but for those who are watching us right now, can you give us some sneak peek to that?
Well, many of the names, would not be names that many people would remember.
Exactly.
Yeah, but these are great names in our national history. For instance, in 1976, we had a football team, we had an athletics team, we had a swimming team, amongst many others. We had a boxing team. In 1980, we had, footballers, who made up what was then the Green Eagles. But in 1976, we had, in the football team, we had Segun Odegbami himself. In the athletics team, we had the Felix Imadis, we had the Bruce Ijirihos, we had the Charlton Ehizuelens, we had the Modupe Oshikoyas, we had, in swimming, we had Joe Ebitu, in boxing, we had Ande, and all of those people. So, in 1976, imagine John Okoro, who was a high jumper and a long jumper. But in the Olympics, he was going to represent Nigeria in the long jump. And he led Africa. He was, was a certain, candidate for a medal. Bruce Ijirigo, Charlton Ehizuelen in triple jump. Modupe Oshikoya, in her specialist events as well as the combined events and so on. So in boxing, we had people who were ready to conquer the world. And then, of course, in football, we had the Thompson Usians, there was Thompson Usian. These were people that, would have become even more famous at that time than the Messis and the Ronaldos.
So listening to you, sir, with all that you've shared now, mentioning the names of these people, how do you believe that these events, will impact the perception of Nigeria, especially when it comes to the international stage, and of course strengthen our diplomatic ties with other nations, with all that you've shared thus far regarding what transpired in South Africa, how things were, we had to boycott quite a number of things because of, the issues at hand. How do you think these events will strengthen the
First is the awareness and the enlightenment.
Okay.
There are many things many people don't know. Today, many young people would be happy to hear that we've had young people in Nigeria who were the zenith of patriotism, who were, ready to sacrifice everything for the love of country. People who were ready to sacrifice everything for the love of Africa. People who were ready to, opportunity costs, and those things don't happen all the time. For many of them, that was an opportunity that never came again. So that was such a huge sacrifice for country and for Africa and for humanity as a whole. Because today, as we look back and count, the successes that Africa had in its strides, in the anti-apartheid struggle, there's something to show for it. South Africa has become independent. South Africa has transformed, and South Africa is now post-apartheid. So it's again a reminder of the kinds of roles, the kinds of sacrifices, that Nigerians, made to see South Africa through its most difficult.
All right, many thanks for that. I'm trying to manage time right now, but I must ask you, as the Director General of NIIA, how do you envision this NIIA Wall of Fame, to evolve in the coming years? Because I've seen it personally, and I must tell you, when I saw it, I had gross pimples. I will not lie to you, because I just felt that why did it take us this long to get to where we are today? But thank God that we are creating awareness, like you said, about this event. But do you see it becoming an annual tradition, to celebrate and honor more outstanding individuals who have contributed to the growth of nation building?
Now, the Wall of Fame, it becomes a mecca of sorts. So it's a place that people would come on pilgrimage, to see, and to identify with that part of our history. It's a place where people would come to and be reminded, that sports is great, and these are the names of the men and women, that made these things happen. Yes.
All right, many thanks for that. Again, I think before we go on a quick break, I would like to ask this, because the ceremony is, we include rather the investiture of Air Peace Diplomacy Awards, and knowing that they are part of my sponsor on this program, I'm an ambassador, an extended ambassador, a media consultant for them as well. Could you, elaborate, on the significance of the collaboration between NIIA and Air Peace in recognizing this excellence in diplomacy and in sports? Because I like the fact that you've emphasized earlier how sports unite us all, but with the two powerful organizations, so to speak, the collaboration, the partnership, how do you see it manifest?
I think that for Air Peace especially, it's just another step in what Air Peace has become. Air Peace is an ambassador of Nigeria. Air Peace, has come in at points where some sacrifice was necessary, that some patriotism was called for, some loyalty to country was called for, some love of country. The evacuations that we've had in the COVID year, I was in South Africa, and I know, that Air Peace, was in the whole business of bringing back, people. Yeah. It has happened, everywhere. Air Peace has done that. So Air Peace is part of has become, a notable feature in the Nigerian diplomatic, terrain. So this is just, extending the frontier of all that Air Peace has done. And once you have a successful airline, that is going places with such ambassadors, you are equipping the ambassadors, with the confidence, of being winners, even when they couldn't take part.
And the connection back home.
Yes, that is it. So,
yeah, many thanks for that submission again, right there. We'll go on a quick break and get a word from our sponsor. Stay with me, I'll be right back. All right, glad to know you're still with us. In case you just joined the show, today's conversation is about the much anticipated, event for the 28th of July, 2023, which is tagged the unveiling of the NIIA Wall of Fame and, of course, Air Peace Award and investiture coordinated by NIIA and, of course, Air Peace. Your peace, Ago. Yes, I have to infuse that. And as regards to the unveiling of the Wall of Fame event for the first part of the program, of course, I have been speaking with the DG of NIIA, and he's been taking us on the journey of conception and, of course, the realization of the idea and those who are behind it, and, of course, what vented where we are today to this significant place of our nation, so to speak. And I must say many thanks thus far, Professor Osagai. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you're trying. You're working hard now. Good for you.
Good for me.
Yeah,
Good for me. I cannot have the first vice president on this show and not be here. All right, guys, Kike put your act together. So let me quickly use this opportunity to open our phone line. Remember, you can be part of this conversation by calling the studio number 08098877400, showing on your screen right now. And of course, we're streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube, both on Real Talk with Kike platform and on Silverbird platform. Sir, many thanks for all that you've shared thus far. And I must quickly ask you, because the NIIA Wall of Fame and Air Peace Award and investiture is undoubtedly, a prestigious event. Even with all that you've shared thus far, carrying us through the inception, what message would you like to send to our audience, for those who are listening to us right now, about this occasion and the importance of celebrating and recognizing excellence in diplomacy and sport? I think it's important for us to actually, emphasize on excellence when it comes to diplomacy and sports.
No, it just simply says to everyone who's listening or watching, whatever you find yourself doing, first, do well.
Do well.
And be best in whatever you do. Don't give up on anything. The recognition will come. The acknowledgement will come. The commendations will come. If you like, the things that you will reap, from what you do would come. But none is as great as the national recognition. I mean, think of it. We are a country of so many millions, and so on. And even that long ago, these heroes and heroines that, have become ambassadors of our country, the ones that are going to be invested as ambassadors and those who will be honored, they were the chosen few. To have been part of, say, the 1980 conquering team, if we look back to Nigeria in 1980, we would have had no fewer than 1,000 excellent footballers.
Absolutely.
But to be chosen is actually a mark of distinction that puts you on the global map. And so it's to tell all of our people that for a very long time, we've always had the wrong perceptions and attitudes towards our sportsmen and women. If you ask people about some of these people that we are honoring, they may not even remember them. And yet, these are the people they are, So we are opening a new chapter. First, to say, let's draw attention to these people. And I think, a lot is happening these days. We have awards for national sportsmen and women, where we have the best footballers, and so on. All of those things, are reminders of the fact they actually hallmark the point about the contributions that these people make on their own. I say this, many of the sportsmen and women that represent Nigeria today have trained abroad. They've honed their businesses and
apologies, I might have to interrupt your line of thoughts. We have a caller from Edo State, Okowa. I hope I pronounced that properly. Many thanks for calling. What's your contribution on the topic at hand? Are you there?
I would have advised, if it is possible, that there should be going around hospital and everywhere to see the number of the poor people that are dying every minute. When they take the statistics, let them bring it down to our president to know how this is distributing this. We are not after that. He who is only on it that will be alive. contribution. Many people are dying in the street and hospital. If it is possible, they should go out and take statistics of it and then publish it. Thank you.
All right, many thanks, Okora, for your suggestion on the forward.
No, I think it's an important point. I mean, celebration, recognitions are stronger. They are better for people who are alive. I think it's simply telling us that, you know, these kinds of recognitions should not stop there.
Yeah.
You know, we should extend the stage and the frontiers of caring about our sportsmen and women to the welfare level. But I think the direct answer to that is a lot of that is already beginning to happen.
Absolutely.
You know, but if we don't bring this to the consciousness of people, some of the names that may have been forgotten, you know, would just waste. You know, but this kind of celebration, and by the way, we are celebrating not only those that are alive, but also those that have also those that you know have died. You know, even in death, they remain heroes. That's the point. So, yes, the point is a valid one. We should also pay attention to how these people live and, you know, and so on and so on. I think a lot is happening in that regard already.
All right. Many thanks. On a show like this or episodes like that, I wish I have more than an hour to continue to, you know, pull the conversation forward. But earlier when I asked you a question on collaboration, you know, between both powerful organizations, I want to really throw more light on networking. You know, networking and collaboration are vital aspect of this event. How do you see this ceremony fostering, you know, relationship amongst governments, you know, government officials, you know, diplomats, business leaders, you know, to further push the Nigerian interest on the international platform? I think this is actually very necessary.
That's the power of sports. Sports, you know, actually would serve as bridges everywhere. Bridges between the public and the private sector, you know, between civil society and government, you know, between donors and, you know, sporting federations, business and so on. Somebody said the other day, you know, that one of the things we haven't properly addressed is the enormous business potential of sports. In fact, it's beyond potential now. It's proven. I mean, the Women's World Cup is underway. And FIFA has generated so much money because, you know, the main sports industry is not all that you see the sportsmen and women doing on the field. Those things that are attached, you know, the rights, the appearance things, the things about media, and, you know, all of those things added together make sports very key. It's key to business, it's key to enterprise, it's key to the economy.
Absolutely, I agree with you. You know, as an entrepreneur, and being one of the, director of MTN Football Scholar, where I have over 20 boys in America, you know, who went to Ivy League school, I can agree with you strongly on this aspect that you just touched on the business angle, where you can also continue to impact. But moving away from all that we've been sharing, though, so I want to touch on a little bit on your personality right now, because, you know, you have decades of career achievements, you know, behind you. And how would you describe, you know, your achievement thus far at NIIA since April 2021, if I'm correct? You know, as the DG of the institution and being a foremost, yeah, that's the word, foremost foreign policy and international affairs think tank. Yeah, that's the word. What's your take on this? How can you weigh it? Or what's your measure thus far?
It's a little unfair, you know, asking me to pass judgment on myself and on the NIIA. I mean, if I was going to be uncharitable, I would blow the trumpets of the institute to high heavens.
You blow your trumpet first before we help you to do that.
You know, most people know, you know, that both in the past and today, many of the things that they know about Nigeria's foreign policy and about international affairs have come from the NIIA. I mean, so that's the cradle, if you like. It's the think tank. It's not just foremost. It's the think tank. You know, that has done that. And now the NIIA has extended, you know, its important branches to most recently the early warning systems, you know, center. So the NIIA remains, if you like, the strong pillar, you know, for churning out things that Nigeria would take seriously to push, including sports. You know, that's what we've talked about now.
All right, many thanks for that. I guess we lost the caller that I kept waiting. Apologies on that. I just didn't want to interrupt my guest on his line of thought. But quickly, sir, I must touch on this. You know, going into the circumstances of our nation at the moment, you know, what are your comments, you know, and what sort of policy recommendation would you give this government, you know, this administration of the day on, or would I say, is it of the day? Yeah, of the day on rescuing us from economic hardship, because we've seen all that is happening right now. I don't want to touch on the increase in fuel price, but what's your take on this quickly?
This is a very difficult and tortuous world that we all live in now.
Yeah.
If you hear stories from across the world, it's all about, you know, people are up in arms. We've never had it this bad
and
as
the
humanity.
The palliative, you know, the
no, this is so the point is this is not just a Nigerian problem. Okay. It's a global problem. Everyone is groaning. I mean, if you travel to Europe today, it's a different Europe. If you travel to Kenya, it's a different Kenya. If you travel to South Africa, it's a different country. And these things just remind us that, you know, we need to be strong at home. If we are strong at home, then we have the resilience capacity to deal with many of these things that would always confront us from the outside world, including, in this instance, you know, petrol prices, energy costs that are rising. We are a little better positioned than many other countries because we have the capacity, the resources to deal with these kinds of issues. It's just to strengthen our productive capacities from within, and I'm sure that, you know, we all would enjoy that. All right,
many thanks again for that elaborate submission right there. I wish I could touch on the educational sector, the agricultural sector, educational sector, knowing that you're a stakeholder of over 41, will I say 41 years of experience in the educational sector, but unfortunately we are running out of time, or we've run out of time. But I must say many thanks thus far for all your submission. But quickly, before I let you go, there's the last segment of the show that we call Trending Stories. These are stories that affect you and I as Nigerians, you know. And the first trending story that caught my attention is that of the fuel, fuel subsidy. And let me quickly give my submission on this. I want to state that, you know, the grievances of the unions and of course the NLC is the lack of palliative, if you ask me, which was one of the things I was trying to touch on when you were talking earlier, before the removal of the subsidy itself. So they have described the government as placing the cart, if you ask me, before the horse. So this palliative should have come first, being well felt, appreciated by the citizens before the subsidy removal. That's my submission, that's my take on it, you know. And I feel that way we'll be able to cushion effects, you know, with quite a number of sectors and all of that. But according to NLC, I think I would like to quickly read what they said if I have time before they start running commentary in my ears. You know, according to NLC president, that's Joseph Ajero, that quoted that there's no other way to explain the proposal to pay a mystery sum of 8,000 naira to each of the mystery poorest 12 million households for 6 months, which amounts to 48,000 naira, and pay just 469 national legislator 70 billion. You know, listening to that, I was just like, oh my goodness, 70 billion, or about 149 million each, which, while the judiciary that has about 72 appeal court judges, you know, 33 national industry court judges. We also have 75 federal high court judges. We also have 21 Supreme Court judges, and a total of about, I think, 201 judges that will receive a total of 35 billion naira each. That is about 147 million each. This is truly misplacement of parity, if you ask me. I don't like to, to be diplomatic with words when it comes to issues like this, because as far as I'm concerned, it's about robbing the poor to pay the rich. That's how I look at the situation at hand right now, which shows that there's no sensitivity to the plight of the masses. And I think that quickly, for the record, I understand that, the recent increase in fuel price, is a result of imported rise in global, fuel prices, and with what you've also shared thus far, also in terms of the pressure on the naira as well. So this calls for the government to quickly look into cutting importation of fuel and relying on local refineries like Dangote to cut off their own, how will I put it, imported inflation as well. When we buy refined fuel from Dangote, we shouldn't be paying dollars, and the pressure of naira will at least be reduced, if you ask me. So from all of this, we can actually begin to feel some ease, as entrepreneurs, as governments. I urge Nigerians right now, I want to use this platform to urge Nigerians to please keep calm, be patient upon the upon this recent development. I believe that, we have the capacity to survive as a resilient nation. Yes, quickly, sir, what's your take on this submission, on this trending story?
Well, it's a trending story. It's an ugly story.
Absolutely.
It's not a palatable story. But that's the reality of where we find ourselves. And unfortunately, you don't have the kinds of... The real world is a complex world. It's not a world where you can isolate things and think that you take step one, and after which you take step two. It doesn't allow for such sequencing. So we have to deal with all of these complexities that are the domestic front and that at the global front. All that we'll say is this has always been long in coming. We were going to have to get to a head, at a point, because that long ago we have failed to do the things that we should have been doing. And these are all cumulative processes, so it's a crunch that we have reached now. We have to resolve them one way or the other.
All right, many thanks again, sir, for your submission on the trending and the ugly situation that we found ourselves. But quickly, the second trending story that caught my attention is that of what's her name again? Insomnia Ejime that apologized to Jamb. I try as much as possible to pronounce people's names properly. But first off, before I come to you, sir, I just want to say that it's a big kudos, to Jamb for standing their grounds and, refuting the forgery saga with unbeatable and undeniable evidence, because the PRO, Benjamin Fabian, is a friend of this platform. He was on this show, on TV, and of course on radio, trying to throw light on the issue at hand. It deserves some recommendation or commendation rather for professionalism in communication on behalf of the exam body, without sentiments and in intent of debasing the young girl involved. Because I feel that many a time when you see the spokesperson, representing other organizations, sometimes they do not have the empathy, human empathy in delivering their message. So on this note, I say kudos to Benjamin Fabian for doing his job properly. But getting back to the issue at hand and the plea against forgery from Insomnia, I want to say that every actions deserve consequences, and it should be applied according to the law, and of course according to our age as well. I must emphasize our age now, because this is because of precedence, if you ask me, sir. Because if you do not do that, precedence can be taken and reference can be taken for granted. So it's not about being treated in a shabby way because of our age, but it must be treated appropriately, for others to take a cue from there, for us to make sure that the law prevails, and at least other perpetrators will actually, get a good cue or greater distance from all of this. But I want to quickly put touch a light on this, because I remember when Fabian came on the show, and I was of the opinion that she actually carried this out by herself, because I feel that leniency can be applied, you know, but I want to urge the law right now to take action against the real perpetrators, because I strongly believe that I don't think that she alone can actually carry out this action. So there are many other real frauds attached to this story, if you ask me. So forgery is a criminal offense, as section 165 of the law says. Let me start sounding like my husband. You know, he likes to quote the section. So I like to rub shoulders to him and say, come on, man, I went to Gbinedo University, like, and I have a vice chancellor on the table. So let us just syndicate, you know, syndicate those who are behind this forgery, you know, let's fish them out, you know, let them be brought to books the way we've been able to actually make sure that this girl has actually been put in a place of truth and transparency. So they should all be dealt with, if you ask me, in terms of exposing them, in terms of the corruption, corrupting, and underage as well. Because however we look at it, she did not just learn this overnight. You know, she saw our leaders, so to speak, that we put in the corridor of power. They've actually, you know, conducted themselves publicly, even in terms of forging certificates. I don't want to show gaslight anybody right now, but in the line of this fraud and forgery, I just believe that she's not capable of this, except with the help of all other accomplices in the crime, if you ask me. That's my own submission, but they should be able to fish others out. They must face, you know, the law. And I'm happy again, I must emphasize, I'm excited that JAM has been able to vindicate themselves on this, and I want to say many thanks again to Fabian Benjamin for a job well done, sir. Let me yield the floor to you.
No. Well, 2 points. The first is that, you know, it's a country where our value system, you know, has come under, you know, very serious scrutiny. How do we get to where we want to get? Are there shortcuts? Are those the kinds of things that today people want to become rich without working hard?
Yeah, so they don't want
people want to graduate from school without going to class. People want to do many things, and so on. So it's a symptom of a larger problem that we have, a more fundamental problem. She's a victim of the system in which she finds herself.
Absolutely.
But I think, as you say, we need to do all the necessary investigations. We cannot begin to apportion blames and roles and so on until we find out what those things are. But I agree with you that when it comes to the consequences, the necessary and relevant provisions of the law should apply.
All right, many thanks again on all your wonderful elaborate submission thus far on the show Real Talk with Kike today. And indeed, it was an awesome show. Currently, you are a resourceful guest. You know, I'm so excited to have you on the platform today, Professor Sagi. The DG of NIIA is not funny, and behave yourself. The guy, the floor manager here, is actually making me to laugh. But many thanks again, sir. It's an honor to have you on the platform today, and I look forward to many collaboration between you and, of course, on Real Talk with Kike. On this note, this is where I draw the curtains of the show. Till I come your way next week, remember to be kind to one another, despite knowing that the economy is ash at the moment. Bye now.